You remember that Green Arrow story that we did a while ago? Yeah, I forgot about it too, hence why it hasn't been on the channel. But guess what? Today we're going to be continuing it. We're going to find out what is happening to Seattle. Time to move on with the Emerald Outlaw. In our last video, Ollie, Dinah, and John began their escape through the Trans-Pacific Railway when they suddenly ran into an assassin sent by Cyrus Broderick. The assassin managed to kill their target, Amin Mustafa, and he escaped, nearly killing Ollie and the others in the process. As the Trans-Pacific Railway came crashing down, Ollie and Dinah rode out telling everyone that the Green Arrow was back. In light of Ollie's recent actions, the news has been watching very closely, awaiting to see what the Green Arrow was going to do next. Journalist Victoria Much reports that the Green Arrow has allegedly bombed the office of CFO Cyrus Broderick, and he's been found assaulting police officers, and he was seen at the wreck of the Empire Express. However, at the train wreck, Green Arrow was also seen helping the passengers escape before the police arrived. Also taking to the streets, Victoria interviewed several people, who some were completely for or some against the Green Arrow in their city. Victoria then tells her audience that the investigation on the Emerald Archer will continue, and soon they will know if they should either fear him or welcome him back to their hometown. Meanwhile, in the Rainer Wilderness, Ollie sits on a tree stating that he's always dreamed of having a treehouse as a kid. They gotta admit, it's pretty cool. Then Ollie sighs, saying that he just wishes that Amiko, his sister, was here to see it, and Dinah tells him not to worry. Emmy has proven that she's pretty much a one-woman army. Plus, she's with her mother, and they have a seriously messed up relationship that needs to be resolved. Right now, they need to focus on Seattle. As Ollie and Dinah step out onto the Outlook, Ollie says, "Yeah, that means clearing my name and getting back the company." Dinah stops him, telling him, or not. The last time that happened, Oliver Queen died. All that's left is Green Arrow, and he's supposed to be helping others, not himself. What does he think that they're building out here? This isn't a treehouse. It's a new life. Later that night in the city, Ollie shoots the hand of Officer Nodding, who's been abusing his power as a police officer. Ollie tells him that he likes to clean up the city too, but he really shouldn't be staining that reputation of those who actually try to do good. Nodding shouts that he doesn't know half of the things that he has to deal with in this city, and he lunges at Ollie with the bloody end of the arrow. The two begin to fight, and after being headbutted in the nose, Ollie manages to subdue the cop, all the while being filmed. Reports of police brutality begin to fill the streets, and the next day at the Seattle City Hall, Mayor candidate Nathan Domini states just that. As he gives his speech on how they need to clean up their city, he gets into his car telling everyone that they need to get through this together. Nathan sits in his car telling the driver to hurry up and go. He has lunch at the University Club in 5. From the driver's seat, Ollie lifts his glasses, stating that that's all he needs, and yes, he's still dead because it's more convenient that way. Nathan tries to go for the door, and Ollie locks him in, telling him, "Look, we've been friends for a long time. I need a favor." Ollie then holds out a small device, and he says that he knows that Queen Industries is the main campaign donor, and he would like this to be placed somewhere close to Cyrus's desk during their next meeting. Nathan asks, "What is it, a bug? Why the hell should I help a disgraced murderer? I already didn't like you before you got accused of murder, Oliver Queen." Ollie sets the device on the dash, telling him, "It's okay. Just hold on to the hard drive cloning device, because Cyrus is going to betray you if he hasn't already." Ollie then gets out of the car, stating, "Oh, and don't tell anyone that we met. No one would believe you anyway." Later that night, Ollie and Dinah head over to investigate a meth house that was mysteriously attacked. While the two look, they overhear a homeless man scavenging through the remains, and they ask if he happened to have seen anything that went down here. The man says, "It all depends on if they want to make a donation." And as Ollie hands over one of his arrows, the man starts sketching into the wall the image of a soldier, telling him, "That's who you're looking for." Ollie asks him, "He's the one who did this?" And the homeless man tells him, "No, not him. Them. Many of them." Meanwhile, over at Queen Industries, Cyrus speaks to a man in the shadows, telling him he wants Green Arrow to feel like everything's going okay, only to later realize that all of this is the beginning of a catastrophe. The man asks if he would like to have him killed, and Cyrus tells him, "No, I want it to be a bit more toxic. I will start killing people in the name of the Green Arrow instead." The next morning, as Victoria Much is found with a green arrow in her chest, Ollie grabs one of the officers, telling him that he's not sure what's happening, but he's here to help. The officer shouts for him not to play dumb, and the reporter starts asking, "So you shut her up?" Dinah starts to pull at Ollie's hand, telling him that maybe they should get going. And Ollie tells the officers, "It wasn't me! Just look at the arrow that she was shot with!" As Ollie reaches, the male officer shouts, "Don't you dare touch that! I saw the video of you beating down Sergeant Nodding. You're nothing but a thug." The officer then reaches for his gun, and Ollie and Dinah run. And Dinah asks, "Did you really think that that was going to work? You can't just start yelling at people to convince them that you're the good guy." Over at the police station, Chief Westberg calls in Sergeant Notting, telling him that the recent stunt is on the internet, and he's now on 4-week probation. And if it was up to him, he wouldn't be paid. Notting says, with all due respect, that man was scum. I tracked him down from a known drug house. Westberg goes on stating that, even so, he's not Green Arrow. You can't just do whatever the hell you want. We're here to protect and serve. When you come back, if you come back, maybe you should be doing your best to keep Seattle safe and lawful. But later, as Notting takes off his helmet, dressed as one of the soldiers the homeless man showed Ollie, he says, "Oh, I plan to." Later in the forest, Ollie begins to examine the arrowhead, stating that they really need to get some evidence of the actual arrows that he supposedly shot. And Dinah says that she's going to take care of that, but they also need to find out who the next target is. Henry says that he's way ahead of him. He created an algorithm that mined through the news sources, social media, and Reddit boards, and what he found was that the next target will most likely be Cy Sampson, the Hawks quarterback. He's been speaking out against the Green Arrow's actions, telling people that they need to stop cheering on what the Green Arrow has been doing. Later that night at the police station, Dinah goes undercover as an officer to sneak into the evidence locker room to find the arrow that Ollie was supposedly shooting with. While she looks at it, Ollie heads over to the Queen Industries field where Cy is set up to play a game, and as Ollie begins his search from above, an arrow shoots down, causing him to fall. Down on the field, Cy calls out the next play, and then another arrow is shot into his back. One of the cheerleaders shouts, "It's him! The killer is Green Arrow!" Back at the police station, Westberg calls in all of the officers to get ready to move out to the stadium as Dinah finds the arrowhead that was shot into Victoria. Westberg leans into the evidence locker, telling Dinah to come on. When he said everyone, he meant everyone. Over at the stadium, Ollie shouts, "I didn't kill anyone!" And everyone begins to yell, "Get him!" Ollie starts to look for a way out, and then he spots a man in the shadows up along the upper bowl. As the shooter sees him and Ollie begin to fire arrows at each other, and both just graze their targets. Ollie runs and he chases after the man, and just as he catches up, Ollie releases 3 more arrows into the man. The shooter stops, dodges the arrows, and then he grabs the last arrow and he stabs it into a fan walking by. Then he continues to run. Then he's suddenly stopped by 3 football players telling him, "You picked the wrong place to cause trouble." Without saying a word, the shooter takes out his bow and he bashes it into the player's groins, kicking another one, snapping his knee, and then he takes an arrow, stabbing it into the last one's eye. Ollie catches up and he thinks that there is only one man who could have done this, had those shots. Please tell him that he is not Tommy Merlin. The shooter tells him, "Wrong Merlin. It's been a long time. Surely you remember Tommy's father, Malcolm Merlin, the original Dark Archer." Ollie quickly ducks out of the way of the arrow that was just released, and he rolls in, grabbing another arrow to strike. As the two struggle, Malcolm tells him, "When I was a boy, Ra's al Ghul handed me a shovel, and he made me dig my own grave to lie down in. When I crawled out, I said goodbye to who I was, and I came out a new man. And that's where Oliver Queen is, stuck in his own grave, but unable to start his new life." Just as Ollie is knocked to the ground, Westberg shouts for them both to drop their weapons and put their hands in the air. Ollie looks over and he sees Dinah in uniform, so he puts his hands up and he covers his ear, shouting, "Now, Black Canary!" Westberg looks back at Dinah and he says, "I thought you said your name was Kinnery." "Oh, Christ, you gotta be kidding me!" Dinah smiles, telling him, "Sorry." And then she screams. Everyone tries to recover from the canary cry, and Ollie then punches Malcolm and Westberg shouts to open fire. Malcolm turns and releases an arrow at Westberg, stating that a cop will make a nice addition to the list of the dead. And Ollie begins to run towards Westberg, and just as the arrow can hit, he throws himself in its path. Malcolm fires an arrow into the passing blimp and he escapes, and Westberg looks at Oliver Queen, telling him, "Green Arrow just sacrificed himself." As Dinah runs over, Ollie rolls over with the broken bow that took the hit, and he says, "I think I'm gonna need mouth-to-mouth." Dinah shouts, "God, you have to be the bravest idiot." But that bow. Ollie gets up, stating that the bow can be fixed. He's not so certain about Seattle. Later, as the sun rises, Ollie heads over to the hospital where Victoria Munch was taken to drop off some flowers. As he sets them up in a vase, he says that he had a dream of what he wanted to accomplish as Green Arrow. But now everyone is hurt because of that name. He can't help but think that things would have been better if he had never taken up the bow. Better to just be a nobody. However, as Ollie leaves through the window, Victoria quietly says, "Don't give up. Keep dreaming." Meanwhile, over at the King County Detention Center, a green mist begins to fill the cells as a masked man walks through, listening to the inmates cough. As they fall, one begs for help, and the soldier looks in, tossing in another gas grenade, telling him, "That is exactly what I'm doing. I'm helping purge Seattle of its filth." A short while later, an officer begins running into where the soldier is, shouting that they're all going to be locked up here soon enough. Notting takes off his helmet, telling him, "You should all be thanking me. It costs an average of $31,000 per inmate here. We're only eliminating the stain on Seattle." The officer asks, "Who are you?" And Notting tells him, we're the Vice Squad, and nobody with a badge gets hurt as long as you don't do anything stupid. Another officer looks at Notting, telling him, I know who you are. You're that cop that the Green Arrow handed his ass to. Notting says, no, I'm not a cop anymore. The Vice Squad is judge, jury, and executioner. And he begins firing into the inmates. As the last inmate falls, Notting turns back to one of the newer squad members and he says, you missed every shot. The man says that he's not so sure about this anymore. And Notting grabs him, putting him in front of another inmate, telling him, there's no going back. We're going to inspire a revolution. The soldier lifts up his gun to the inmate's head, but before he can pull the trigger, a gunshot is fired right into the soldier's eye. Westberg pops out a shell from his shotgun, asking, how does it feel to be on the other end of the muzzle? Drop your weapons. Notting tells him, I never wanted to kill a cop, but for you, I'm gonna make an exception. And while the others fire into the crowds, Notting escapes through the back. While the Vice Squad runs into their truck, green arrows start to rain down, hitting the men. One of the soldiers asks if that's the Green Arrow, and Notting tells him no. The Green Arrow is too much of a bleeding heart. That's the Arrow Killer. As the squad escapes, Notting decides, no, I'm not going to run. I'm gonna kill Westberg right here and now. He spins the truck around and begins to head back towards Westberg, and that's when Dinah jumps onto the hood of the truck. She asks if they like playing cop, then where's their siren? Because she can give them one. And she canary cries into the cab of the truck. Ollie runs through the street, grabbing Westberg, and he tackles him out of the way. Notting slams onto the brakes and he jumps out, and Westberg runs up, stating that there's only one thing worse than a dirty cop. A dirty cop who thinks that he's clean. Notting bashes Westberg with his rifle, and then he grabs Ollie, telling him, you are hopelessly misguided. He then points his gun, telling him, you are such a waste of a crime fighter. But before he can pull the trigger, Notting screams when an arrow is shot through his hand. More arrows begin to shoot down, hitting the other soldiers, and Notting runs back into the truck. Dinah turns back, asking who shot those arrows. Was it Malcolm? And Amiko looks down, telling them all, you can call me Red Arrow. Ollie shouts to Amiko, asking, where the hell have you been? She says, you know, almost got killed by a Yakuza boss, had a heart-to-heart with my assassin mom, usual teenage drama, and I totally did just say, call me Red Arrow. If I'm gonna come back, then I want to come back on my own terms, and that means that I need a brother, not a boss. Ollie says, well, as your brother, I'm hugging you whether you like it or not. And as the car behind them explodes, she says that she's good with that. Dinah interrupts, stating that she hates to do this, but the bad guys are getting away. Westberg sighs, telling everyone, come on, we need to go take care of those guys. A short while later, over at the police hangar in O'Neill Airfield, the group begins to stock up on supplies when Notting calls out to everyone inside. Notting shouts that him and Green Arrow could have been allies. In fact, I really admire a man like him. Ollie shouts back, do not compare me to yourself. And then he notices the homeless man from before. Notting pushes the man out, asking Ollie what is he going to do for this man? Risk his life for someone who can't even contribute to society? Ollie tells Amiko to hang back, and Amiko says, Red freaking Arrow will do whatever she wants, thanks. As everyone starts to get into position, the explosions begin to go off behind Notting and his soldiers, and Westberg pokes out of a tank, stating that he was a tank commander during the Gulf War. It looks like he's still got it. Ollie runs over to the homeless man, asking if he's okay, and Notting coughs, telling him to check his pockets, then ask again. The homeless man reaches into his pockets and he finds a sprung grenade. Westberg jumps down, snatching it and throwing it back to Notting. As the grenade blows Notting apart, Westberg says that the only way to handle a bad cop is with a good cop. The following day is election day, and Nathan heads to the polls to make sure that he has everyone's support, and he shakes their hands. As he reaches for one, Ollie grips down on his hand, telling him, you're going to lose. Your campaign of fear and hate will just be encouraging the extremists. Nathan begins to sweat, telling him, I told you to stay away. And Ollie says, there's still hope. I just need you to put the cloning device next to Cyrus's computer. And Nathan tells him that he can't do that, and Ollie turns to walk away, telling him, you can still do the right thing, Nathan. Later that night, Westberg sits alone in his home with a drink when he sees Ollie's reflection on the TV. Westberg says that he heard him come in through the window. He doesn't suppose that he's here for a single malt, and Ollie tells him no. He's got something to say. Westberg sips his cup, and Ollie says, I know that I may have taken some liberty with the law, but know that I've done it with the best intentions. Ollie grabs his hood, telling him, I know that the chief of police put his trust in Green Arrow, but can he do the same for Oliver Queen? Westberg stares for a moment and he pours another drink and he downs it, and Ollie says, I know I'm taking a stupid risk here, but I need to know if I can trust you. Westberg gets up, telling him, I'm too old for this crap. But what the hell, I'll help. But first, this old man has to take a leak. Westberg heads to the bathroom, and when he finishes, he washes his hands. And then he sees Malcolm Merlin behind him. A few moments pass, and Ollie sees water spilling out into the hallway, and he asks if everything's all right. With no answer, Ollie opens the door, and he sees Westberg on the ground with a green arrow shot into the back of his head. The next night over at Queen Industries, Cyrus tells Nathan that this view is fitting for a king, isn't it? Or rather, the mayor of Seattle. Looks like their hard work and the death of Westberg paid off. Nathan asks, we? I'm the mayor, not you. In fact, all you ever do is talk in circles. Nathan Domimi is not some pretty girl to be dragged around. Cyrus hits the TV remote showing a video of Nathan at one of their social gatherings telling him, well, I know the mayor wouldn't want this getting out, would he? Cyrus begins to pour a drink telling Nathan that he would hate to have such a compromising video leak. And Nathan reaches into his pocket, grabbing the hard drive cloning device and sticking it to Cyrus's computer. And then Cyrus calls out to him. He pulls out a gun asking Nathan, what exactly do you think you're doing? Over at the news station, Victoria gets back to work when she hears Ollie asking how is he holding up. Victoria says that it was him who came to visit her in the hospital, right? Or was that a dream? Ollie holds out a flash drive saying that he laid a few things out for her. A vast criminal network known as the Ninth Circle is at work here, and this is going to help bring light to them. Ollie begins to explain that he shouldn't even be here. This could put her at risk, and Victoria stops him, telling him she's all his. He looks over and sees the flowers that he brought into her room, and Victoria says, yeah, she dried them out. Is him and Black Canary a thing? A few moments later, Ollie tells her yes, and Victoria sighs, stating that that arrow nearly hit her heart. And Ollie tells her that he knows he won't let anyone hurt her again. The next morning, out in the forest, Ollie and Amiko test out the new bow by shooting skipping rocks. As the two talk about what's to come, Ollie senses an arrow and he shields Amiko before it can hit her in the face. As more arrows begin to rain down, Ollie covers Amiko, telling her to get John and Dinah. And Amiko shouts, Red Arrow will fight alongside him. Ollie shouts, telling her, go! Malcolm begins to chase after Ollie, telling him that his contract has changed. Instead of ruining the Green Arrow is now hated by everyone. So what's the harm in dying as a martyr? Ollie leads Malcolm into the dark woods, and as Malcolm walks, he triggers a trap and a wooden spike shoots into his leg. He rips the spike out, shouting for Ollie to come out. Dinah watches from a distance, and she pulls a rope to drop a net, and as Malcolm sees it, he rolls out of the way. He runs ahead and sees Ollie standing alone, and he pulls back his bow, telling him, my son was a failure, just as your father was, so maybe we can work together. Ollie holds out his arm guard, stopping the arrow, not saying a word, and Malcolm continues firing and walking forward. Amiko watches, and Malcolm shouts that the Justice League won't even have you, but the League of Assassins would. Amiko cuts a rope, and a giant spiked log swings down, crashing into Malcolm Merlin's chest. Ollie walks over to his body, telling him, you've killed civilians, killed Chief Westberg, you tried to kill my sister. He kneels down, raising an arrow, and then Ollie hears the voice of John telling him, sorry. And then he feels a sharp pain of being hit in the back of the head with a gun. Ollie struggles, asking, what the hell are you doing? And John Diggle grabs Malcolm's body, telling him, try not to follow. I'm sorry, but I owe this man my life. Meanwhile, Victoria begins to go through the data and the records that Ollie has left to her of Queen Industries. And as she looks at a map of locations, she thinks that Queen Industries was built on the center of a star, almost like a star city. And there you have it. We have more of a resolution to the Green Arrow storyline that once again I am sorry that we here at Comicstorian forgot about. There's quite a few stories that fall off the whole bench wagon thing that we forget about and we don't ever get back to, but we're trying to remember them, and one of them is Green Arrow. If you stick around, you can subscribe, and you'll get to see the next video, which is the return of Roy Harper. Why are you looking at me like that, Houston? The guy behind the camera looks at me like I'm crazy. Do you think I'm crazy? Why is everyone looking at me like I'm crazy? Am I some crazy guy? You want to hang out with the crazy guy? Then click the link down below to subscribe. Click over here for some more Green Arrow storyline, or you can click right here to get yourself a little bit of that best of YouTube recommendation. Now I'm gonna fade out like the Joker.